Hello and welcome to Ipswich's Real Estate Podcast, formerly On the Couch with Steve. I'm Steve Athanates. I'm from NG Real Estate Ipswich. As always, this podcast is going to help you navigate the often complex world of buying and selling real estate here in Ipswich. I'm joined today by Matt Taylor-Farrington from Purple Bunny Marketing.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Hello, Matthew. How are you?
You're welcome with the name change, by the way.
Yes. Well, it's very true. We are Ipswich's Real Estate Podcast.
You are. I mean, a couple others have had a crack, and we noticed that you've stuck with it, and we've got the listeners and we've got the views. So it's going great.
So we're well over 50 episodes now, and we've just, obviously, this is episode number 2 of Ipswich's Real Estate Podcast.
Yes. Well, season 3.
Season 3.
Yeah, you're on season 3, right?
3 years.
Come on.
See, a lot of sitcoms don't get this far, mate. A lot of sitcoms don't get this far.
Correct.
2 seasons and they're done.
Although I'm sure Warner Brothers aren't knocking on our door, that's for sure.
I don't think so. You are right there. What are we discussing today?
I guess what we were going to look at and some of the search patterns we look around for you and see what people are doing. We noticed that people are kind of searching for what to look for in a building and pest report. So we thought it might be a great topic to kind of get you on, ask a couple of questions around it and some of the common search things around what people are looking at. So I guess diving into it, what are the most common issues that people are finding in building pest, especially around this market?
Okay, obviously here in Ipswich we have a couple of different soil types. Obviously we have sandy loams, we have clays, and in some parts of Ipswich we have black soil. Okay, Now black soil is a reactive type of soil. So it expands when it gets wet and it contracts when it gets dry. Now when you think about it, if you had one side of your house that's getting wet and the other side of the house is dry, you've got one area expanding and another area contracting, and it can act like hydraulic rams underneath your house. Not good for the house.
No,
right?
correct.
So when you build a house, a lot of builders will actually recommend that you put no gardens around your house when you build it, because if you have gardens beside your house and you're watering those gardens, some parts will be wet, some parts will be dry, and we get to that point where we're creating these hydraulic rams next to your house, which we strongly...
Not good.
We don't recommend you do that at all. So a lot of builders will say, put a concrete path all the way around your property and you will stabilise the property.
Yes.
All right. So for any new house, you'll see a lot of new homes have concrete paths all the way around them, including the driveway, which just holds the house in place.
Yes.
Right. But the house also would be engineered by an engineer for the soil conditions that exist. Right. But when you're going to look at houses, a telltale sign of movement that is being caused, and whether it's because of moisture or dryness, it can be one or both, and sometimes, at the same time, it can be dryness and moisture, is you'll see cracks. And those cracks can occur internally in gyprock, around window frames, in your cornices, on your up near your ceilings. And sometimes in extreme cases where there's been strong movement, you will see cracking in external brickwork, or you'll see gaps around windows and door frames where the house effectively is being pulled out of shape.
Yes.
Okay, so they're things that visually, as you're walking through a home, walking around a home, you can be looking at yourself.
Yes.
Okay, now if you see those things, you can obviously question the agent about, is this an area that has reactive soil? Has there been a building and pest inspection been done on this property prior to them seeing the property, or is there one in existence for them to view?
Yes.
All right. So you've got a couple of options if you visually see something that sparks an alarm.
Yes, definitely. And I guess you kind of answered it then. I guess the structural red flags in homes would be looking for those cracks in the cornices, the window jams, all those sorts of things.
Internally, doesn't always mean it's a structural issue. It could just be a movement or a settlement type issue. There are Australian standards of what constitutes a structural crack.
Yes.
Right? So there's certain widths of cracks which a building inspector would classify as a structural crack. And in those cases, they would often, if not always, recommend that you seek the opinion of a structural engineer, because they're a licensed builder and their license doesn't allow them to give an opinion on matters of structural integrity.
Yes.
But their report, for insurance purposes, or steer you in the direction and potentially recommend you engage a structural engineer to determine if it is structural or non-structural.
Yes. Okay. I guess then, if they are minor cracks or there's, leaks or those sorts of things that are spotted or identified, what's the kind of long-term impact on the value of the home if they're not fixed or addressed?
Okay, well, look, if you think about it from the homeowner's point of view, if you start to notice minor movement, if it's a new house, you have a 6-year warranty with the Queensland government, which you can then get the builders come back out and determine whether it's just movement, normal movement or settlement within the house. If they think it's more than that, they may engage a structural engineer themselves under a builder's warranty.
Yes.
In the event that it's an older property, say it's 20, 30, 40 years old, sometimes older. Here in Ipswich, you've got houses, that were built pre-1900, so they're getting towards 140, 150 years old. So in those type of properties, it's not uncommon to see some movement issues. Not all movement is bad movement.
No.
Some movement is normal and
Yes.
it's consistent with a building that's sitting on the ground.
Yes.
Right, or stumps. So, like I said, not all movement do you need to panic about. But if you're a homeowner, you can definitely investigate it. If you're a buyer, the implications of, leaving it unchecked is it could turn into something extremely costly.
Yes.
So to a homeowner or a new buyer who's had a building and pest inspection, if they recommend that you do certain things to mitigate the movement,
Yes.
you would be well advised to follow their advice.
Yes, agreed.
All right. Now, in terms of moisture, this is something that we see a lot. I mean, in almost every building and pest inspection where there's moisture detected, the building and pest inspectors will use moisture meters in and around wet areas.
Yep.
So showers, toilets, laundries, those sorts of areas, sometimes around the back of toilets, things like that, where there's moisture detected. Now, again, not all moisture is bad moisture, and it's sometimes consistent. If you've got a tiled floor or a tiled wall in your shower or in your bathroom, okay, it has grout in between the tiles. Now, grout is a type of concrete and it's naturally porous. So if you spill water on it, it will soak the water into the tile.
Yes.
Underneath the tile, there is a waterproofing underneath it. So it doesn't really matter, and it's normal that water would, moisture would be detected in a wet area. If it's severe, okay, and it's detected with a moisture meter by the builder, they may recommend that you get a plumber to do a pressure test on the, say it's in your shower cubicle. They may pressure test the handles and the actual shower, whether it's like a rain head or just an arm that's poking out, to see if it's leaking. It could be leaking internally into the wall, and it may just be a matter of re-siliconing around the fixtures and obviously tightening them. So again, it's a normal thing. So just because there's moisture in a shower, you don't need to panic.
Yes.
Okay, it's normal.
Yes.
All right. It's just the degree of moisture that can sometimes be an issue.
Yeah, 100%. And are there warning signs, I guess, that indicate a property might have hidden defects?
Look, you can. Sometimes when you're going through a house, you'll see a lot of buyers who are very systematically scanning the walls, looking at the ceilings, looking at the joints in the sheets in the ceiling to see if there's any deflections, whether there's any popping of the nails that are holding up the gyprock. There are some certain telltale signs that you can see that a house either has had some movement, or if it's 40 years old, and it's got a gyprock roof, it's perfectly normal that ceiling will be starting to pull down a little bit.
Yes.
Just simply because of the weight of the gyprock sheet and a little thing called gravity.
Yes.
Is trying to pull that sheet down. So effectively, again, it's not the end of the world. A ceiling that has some slight movement may be able to be re-glued and re-screwed.
Yes.
Okay, then patched over and repainted. It doesn't necessarily mean just because there is some movement that the whole ceiling just needs to be pulled out and you put a new one in. You can just repair it.
Yes.
But you can look visually for things that concern you. If you had some concerns, you can address them with the real estate agent. If you don't get a satisfactory explanation, you're obviously going to engage a licensed builder to do a building inspection, and you can ask those questions. Is the movement, the crack, the moisture, is that what you would consider normal for the age of the house?
Yeah.
Okay. If it was a brand new house and you had significant cracking, you would be concerned. If it was a house that was 40 years old and it showed some minor cracking, you would start to think,
that's normal.
Well, if that's all that's happened after 40 years, it's a really good house.
Yes.
So it's normal. Not all cracks, not all movement, and not all moisture is bad.
Yes,
and that's the message we want to get out to you.
Yeah. I guess that leads to when it isn't normal and it might be bad. When is it good for a buyer to kind of walk away from what they find in a property report? So say they go and get the building and pest. It's not great.
Yes.
It doesn't look good.
Yes.
And when should they... And I guess people have got to be mindful and make their own decisions about what they're doing.
We've got a couple of options. Before you walk away, there is an option to negotiate. So you have an agreed price on the property. You undertake to do a building and pest inspection, and during the course of that inspection, a defect, which is considered a major defect, is found.
Yes.
Now, let's say that's a crack in the slab, or there's a significant leak. And if we use the example of a bathroom where we said there was moisture, but it was only minor moisture, that would be consistent. If it was a major leak, and you could feel it and the tiles were popping and things like that, you then would go back to the seller and say, hey, listen, it's been identified that this bathroom is leaking. It appears the wet seal has failed, and that potentially the only way you can fix it is to rip the bathroom out.
Yes.
Right? So you can then go back to them and say, hey, I've got a quote from a builder, tiler, all those sorts of things, but generally a builder, to say it's going to cost $15,000 to $20,000 to replace this bathroom.
Yep.
So before you walk away, you might say, hey, listen, I love everything about this property. It's a real shame that this bathroom is leaking and it's failed, but I still want to buy it.
Yes.
But before I buy it, I want some compensation for either the seller's either going to fix it, or if I don't have time for the seller to fix it, I want them to take money off the purchase price in order for me to fix it.
Yes.
All right. So therefore, you can go back through the real estate agent and obviously ultimately through a solicitor and say, based on an unsatisfactory building and pest report due to a major leak in the bathroom, we are seeking a $15,000 or a $20,000 price reduction in relation to this property. In the event that you give me that price reduction, I will satisfy the building and pest condition.
Yes.
If you don't, I'll terminate the contract.
Correct. Yeah.
So you clearly give the seller an option. Now, for the seller, if they're being guided by a real estate professional, the real estate professional is going to tell them, hey, listen, if this buyer pulls out, you still have a leaking bathroom.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're going to have to fix it no matter what. So we've got someone here who really wants to buy your property.
Yes.
Let's be smart.
Yes.
And negotiate.
Correct.
Now, the seller can either say, I agree with the $15,000 or $20,000 price reduction, or, hey, I think that's exorbitant. I'm prepared to offer you $10,000 in the way of compensation.
Yes.
And that's called, negotiation in itself.
Yeah.
Or a counter negotiation. So effectively, you've got choices. Now, in the event that you can't come to an agreement and you have a major defect and there is no chance, or the seller refuses to negotiate, that's when you would consider the option of termination.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You have to feel comfortable. It's a lot of money. We talked about median house price here in Ipswich, $680,000 for an average house, and it goes way up from there. If you had a major defect that you were severely unhappy with, it would be a brave person who would continue with that sale saying,
100%,
hey,
yeah.
I love the house, but I'm okay with the fact that the bathroom is completely shagged.
Yeah.
Do you mean? No one ever says that.
No, correct.
You mean? I love it. I'm glad the bathroom's no good.
No, agreed. And I guess that's where, the building and pest report is there really to give you a bit of transparency and peace of mind about, okay, here's what I'm walking into, and then you can weigh up, is this right for me or no? And you can make that decision.
And with that, lots of people, they spend, anywhere up to sort of $600-700 for a building and pest inspection.
Yes.
Now, as you're walking around the house, visually you notice there's a couple of little holes in the gutter. Okay? And you're thinking to yourself, you see them, you think, oh, okay, it looks, maybe some leaves in there and it's just rusted out slightly. you then go in and you make your offer knowing that effectively at some point in time you're going to need to change that gutter.
Correct.
Right? So when you get a building and pest inspection and the inspector says, hey, yeah, you're right, there is some rust occurring in that gutter at some point, not today, not tomorrow, and probably not for another 3 or 4 years, you could leave it there. But at some point in time, you're going to have to change that gutter.
Yes.
Okay. Some people will accept that as fair wear and tear, and it's being consistent with the age.
Yes.
So not all defects get a price reduction, and not all defects are worth terminating a contract.
No.
So there are things called minor and major defects.
Correct.
And it's important as a buyer you understand the difference.
Yes.
Okay. If you're buying a 40-year-old home and it's been left out in the sun, in the wind, and the rain for 40 years,
yes,
it's going to have a
it's
couple
have
of
some
bumps.
issues. Yeah.
You know, do you mean? So the same as if we stuck a human out in the sun and the wind and rain for 40 years, they wouldn't be feeling too good about themselves.
No, agreed.
So it's consistent with the age of the house.
Yes.
So common sense, which is not always common,
yes,
common sense has to prevail.
Agreed. And I guess that leads me to that final question, which was, not everybody who gets a building in Pest and finds those minor defects is going to be able to negotiate down. And especially in this current market that we're seeing, those types of things, there's potentially another buyer lined up who's prepared to accept the home in its form.
And that's right.
Yeah.
And it's a great point you raise that, like I said, especially in the case of minor defects.
Yes.
If it's a major, you've got some negotiation power.
Correct.
But if it's a minor defect, and particularly if it's obvious, as you walk up to the front steps,
yes,
you can see that one of the step treads is badly worn.
Yes.
That would be considered a minor defect, but you saw it as you walk towards the property.
Correct.
You can't then, or it's unlikely in today's market that you're going to come back to the owner after the event and say, hey, I really love your house, I want to buy it, but I'm not going to buy it and I'm going to pull out unless you fix that step tread.
Yes.
The owner could potentially say, hey, listen, buddy, we're in a multiple offer situation. I've got 7 people who want to buy this house. You saw the step tread.
Correct.
You're going to buy it with the step tread the way it is, or I'll
yes,
sell it to someone else.
Yeah, correct.
Again, common sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So minor defects, not huge amounts of negotiation in today's market. Major defects, definitely room to negotiate, and potentially if it's too serious and you can't negotiate a successful conclusion, termination.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. That's all people have been kind of looking for answers around.
So we've answered the people's questions.
I believe so, yes.
Excellent. That's what we do here on Ipswich Real Estate Podcast. We answer your questions. So if you like the content that we've talked about today, if you've got any questions about what we've discussed, we would love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the link below. Obviously, I've got to thank my great friend Matt Taylor-Farrington from People Bunny Marketing.
Yes, thanks, Steve.
Thank you for coming along. Once again, if you'd like to hear more of what's happening with Ipswich's Real Estate Podcast, join us for our next episode. I'm Steve Athanates from Inge Real Estate. See you real soon.